Good morning, everybody. It's a slightly drizzly morning here in Hawaii. I was thinking this morning about one of the hardest things to do in a garden. In general, vegetable gardening is pretty easy. So many Americans do it. I guess I really should have a statistic that says 40% of Americans grow tomatoes in the backyard or something. I really don't know how many of you. Probably changes all the time. But I know it's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of gardens in the U.S. And so you all know pretty much growing a lot of those basic crops, tomatoes, zucchini, string beans, pickles. This is easy stuff for most of us. Some of it's a little harder for me here because of the tropical conditions, but it's generally pretty simple. So getting a crop of this, that, or the other thing, no big deal. First couple times you raise 10 bushels of tomatoes in the backyard, you get pretty excited about it, but after a while, it gets a little boring when you got to squeeze them all down into tomato juice. But I think that the hardest thing to do is to maintain a continuous supply of produce. Steady supply of salad, man. That's the roughest thing that a gardener can really involve themselves in. I personally have gotten better at it over the years, but I still mess up. Periodically we're going to the store, and even though I'm in Hawaii and I can grow most stuff year round, I'm still going to the store sometimes to fill in where I did not have a food that we wanted to eat. Quite often here it's lettuce. That happens too often. I really don't buy too much else. Sometimes I will buy some local cabbage here too. Occasionally I will also run out of cabbage. Now, there's no good reason for me to run out of either of those crops in this environment. I could keep a steady supply of all of them coming nonstop out of my garden, so I never had to go anywhere else to get lettuce or cabbage, okay? 12 months out of the year, they'll grow. Now, it's not the case for everybody who lives in the mainland, but still, for the period of time that you have where outdoor gardening is possible, you can maintain a steady supply of certain crops. Again, the tomato, if you got a good variety, once it starts fruiting, it's going to continue fruiting until the frost kills it. All right, so that one's easy. The hard ones are things like cilantro, things like arugula, endive, spinach, lettuce, as I mentioned. Now, kale is a leafy green that's very persistent, and so single planting of kale will ordinarily yield you kale throughout your growing season. Here it yields for 2 or 3 years, and I can even take the big stalks, cut them, stick them in the ground again, and they re-sprout. So kale's kind of eternal in Hawaii. But the problem is having it ready for the table when the mouths are hungry, and I never manage. I mean, sometimes, for a while, I have periods of time, but I'm just not quite organized enough to always have a lettuce plant that's ready every day that I need a salad, or to have an arugula. What happens is, I have arugula now, well, I have lettuce then, now I have broccoli. It's kind of the way it works around here. And so we tend to go in rotation on how and what we make and use a salad out of, the nature of what sort of vegetables are being brought in will vary, and mostly because of my shortcomings at being able to plan ahead to make sure I have a little bit of everything coming all the time. That's really hard to do. It is. Yeah, it means that every few weeks you have to be planting a little of this and a little of that, and putting it out in the garden, and pulling out the old stuff and going on like that. I think for us at this house, the best solution is we change what it is that we're using for produce from time to time. That's the way it kind of goes. Now, if you live in the mainland and you have cold winters, hot summers, well, somewhere in between, you probably have reasonably mild springs and early falls. Well, obviously, high summer when it's really hot, your watermelons and your cantaloupes and your corn and stuff are just growing like crazy. Tomatoes, loving it. Peppers, probably loving it. But your lettuce, your spinach and stuff, probably not liking it so much. Maybe it's kind of dry. It's definitely kind of hot for those things. Yet your springtime and your fall times may be the best for those tender leafy greens. Things that bolt to seed fast, like cilantro, like leaf lettuce. Definitely better as the days decline. Yeah, as if you put them in late summer to early fall, as the days are going downward, they're not going to be so prone to bolt towards seed because the days are shortening. As you put them in the spring, they grow too, but they will bolt much faster. They will say, oh, long days, good, let's make seed, boom, Yeah, and they don't last as long. I've found in California, I can get a crop of cilantro that's planted in October to go all the way through the winter up to February. Whereas in summer, I'm lucky if I can get 3 weeks before it's bolted and turned to coriander. So planning and being organized is a critical key in maintaining a constant supply of produce running out of the garden, keeping you out of the market. On the other hand, most of us aren't quite that organized and things don't always work out. So learning how to improvise. Just because you like to eat a salad with your meal every day made from iceberg lettuce and tomatoes doesn't mean that that's the only thing you can put next to that meal. There are some wonderful salads made with broccoli. There are some excellent salads with endive. My mother in Illinois knew that her lettuce did not grow well for her in late summer when it was hot and dry around Chicago. And so she used to use endive and escarole at that time. These are a little more bitter. They're chicory relatives, but they tolerate the heat better. They make some pretty good salad greens. She'd usually mix it with a bit of lettuce. I have found myself that endive, which can be sort of bitter, works really well in late summer California climate. When it's dry and warm, the endive will grow well. The lettuce doesn't come out well at that time. Because it's a little bit on the bitter side, it's really good when you mix it with apples, walnuts, balsamic vinegar, and olive oil. Ooh, is that wonderful? Yeah, it's delicious. Or sushi vinegar and olive oil. The balsamic will stain the apples. Depends on whether that matters to you or not. But when you take herbs that are somewhat bitter and a little bit strong, and you mix them with something that is naturally sweeter, like an apple, like a grape, like pieces of pear, and so on. Yeah, you can make a really nice salad that way. Coming up with more and more different ways to use specific vegetables. I am bringing in squash at the moment, and I am thinking of several interesting squash recipes. Again, one of them that I came up with a while back was where we went ahead and we steamed the squash, cubed the squash, laid it into a baking pan, put some butter over it, put a little brown sugar on there, put walnuts on there, and stuck cubed pears on top, put it in and toasted it in the air fryer. Oh man, was that good. And I am toying with making up a recipe, maybe today even, that would involve maybe some milk and beaten eggs and something similar, so it amounts to sort of a custard. Anyway, when you only got one vegetable coming in from the garden, knowing 12 different ways to prepare it, you really be helpful. Yeah, you make an excellent Thai curry with squash. There's a lot of things you can do with it. If you've never had a pumpkin pie made from homegrown squash, Ooh, that's the best. It's squash makes a better pumpkin pie than a pumpkin does, and obviously, if the only pumpkin pies you've ever had came out of a can, don't do that again. No, get yourself a squash. So, yes, to me, maintaining the constant supply of everything is basically impossible for me. It's just too much work and concern to deal with that. I find it far easier to learn many different ways of using all sorts of different ingredients, so that as you know, 1 week all I have is cucumbers and sweet corn. The next week I got tomatoes, peppers, and cabbage, or whatever. Figuring out how all of these ingredients, no matter what it is that's coming in, can be utilized inside the basic diet. It maybe takes a little creativity, some research sometimes, but this is not necessarily something that all cooks I have met know how to do well, which is to work with what's there. Learning how to cook with whatever you happen to have on hand, even if it's just baking powder, salt, and flour. You can do a lot with it. There's a lot you can do with that. Yep, there you go, folks. Just a little bit about trying to maintain a constant supply of food for the kitchen. Hang loose.